Hello, this is Irvin Eisenberg coming to you from Resilience Occupational Therapy. This is Jeremy and I have been on recording for a little while here. We've got a few different videos we've been putting out.
We're having some fun.
Yes. And as always, as I've said in all the other videos as well, none of this is meant to be medically diagnostic or prescriptive in any way. It's just Jeremy's opinions and my opinions and us talking about stuff. But yeah, and we've got you on again. Let's talk about goals, especially when it comes to health or physical fitness and how you like to approach goals.
Yeah. This warrants even maybe a revision to the disclaimer, because this one isn't so much about medical things or body and health. But one of the things, and I have a podcast, and one of the things I always tell the audience is, I really don't care if you agree with me. I care that you think. I care that if I say something that you consider it, because if you consider it and you come back to your original opinion, great, that's awesome. But you showed yourself that you're willing to think and maybe step outside the box. And I think that's really important for all of us. Goals are something that are really front and center for a lot of industries right now, and pretty much anybody who's working in any kind of physical service, right? Martial arts, weightlifting, supplementation, right? Like it's a subject that is heavily discussed because 3/4 of the United States is overweight or obese. Most people, if they're being honest with themselves, want their body to change in some way. And that is the root of most people's goals around their body. Oh, I want to lose this much weight. I want to put on this much muscle. I want to, I want my shirts to fit differently. I want to be a different pants or dress size, etc. And I think that's really natural. And I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting to be a better version of yourself. And I think it's important to acknowledge that, because there are people out there that if you tell them, I want to lose 10 pounds, I want to go to the gym 3 times this week, I want, I don't like the way my pants fit, I want to make these changes. There are people around you who are not willing to put in the work on that. And so they will, they'll sometimes nicely, sometimes not so nicely attack your goal setting. And that really forces a lot of people into goal setting as a very personal, private endeavor, which kind of stinks, because one of the number one ways to achieve your goals from the research, because believe it or not, there's lots of research around goal setting and achieving goals, is to tell people your goals. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. No matter how crazy it is, no matter how simple it is, the more people you tell, the more you're likely to achieve it, because you don't want to look like a liar in front of the friends, family that you probably told. But one of the things that I find people do is they go so far into the future with all of the things that they want, and they try to work on all of them at once, and it becomes exhausting. And because they can't do all of them well at once, they get discouraged and they just go, well, forget it. Whereas, how do you make progress at anything? It's incremental, right? We talk about that in the martial arts context. And I don't know if I should pause here and let you respond.
Well, I'm just thinking about a lot of different goal things and how much I'm writing. For insurance purposes, I have to write goals all the time because they want to show that people are progressing towards those goals, and they have to be SMART goals. So they need to be measurable. I can't remember all the acronym for SMART, but there's measurable, achievable, and timely is in there. And I found that process both being a process I make my clients go through, because I get very into the minutia to make sure it's really a goal that they like, because I have to do it for insurance purposes regardless, but I want to make sure we're doing it right. I'm not just going to make a statement and make a goal for that person. And I also want it to be something that can be achievable. We always got our short-term and our long-term goals. And the longest term goals I'm writing out are 12-week out, maybe 3 months,
Mm,
if that far. But we're looking at what's achievable. And I'm doing much more short term than I think you're talking about. I think you're talking about sort of the aspirational goal, maybe for when I'm 90, or maybe for just sort of
could
this
be.
aspirational goal that's may or may not be attainable because I want to be a superhero or whatever it might be. But
Right.
but how do we break that down into what's achievable right now? And even in the pain neuroscience research that I'm doing right now, and that having people see the
Mm,
therapeutic benefit of seeing achievable goals and being able to check off those goals as you move along and seeing your progress lets you know where you stand and is much more heartening.
yeah.
So I feel like that's
Momentum
kind of where
is
you were going with some of that.
momentum is so critical. We've got to be able to see that our efforts have yielded some progress. It's one of the things that we talk about in the martial arts space a lot. In some martial arts schools, it's led to, a lot of stripes on belts. Some folks out there might have
Mm.
seen that. And I'm not disparaging that in any way, knowing, okay, I put in this work and I yielded this benefit. Um, is really valuable. If you're lifting weights, there's an inherent feedback loop there because if you're even moderately dedicated to it, you'll see the numbers go up. And okay, I was able to do this, one extra time today, or I put on another 5 pounds on the bar today, right? Like whatever it is, there's some positive feedback that helps you correlate effort versus result. And that's the I think what goals really come down to is trying to help you bridge a gap in understanding between that effort and that result. If I want, like, I spend a lot of time working with small businesses. So let's say I'm working with a business they want to generate $1 million in revenue, and they've never done that before. So that's a goal. Well, they know they have to put in effort to do that. They know they have to put in effort, at least in a different way, and probably additional effort than they have before to get there. But if they knew exactly what to do to earn $1 million a year, they would have already done it, right? So there's a when we're talking about setting goals, those goals are usually something that requires some faith in ourselves. And when I think you acknowledge some things, I'm not familiar with the acronym you were using, but when I talk about goal setting with people, there are two things that I think are incredibly important. One is the goal has to be measurable. You have to be able to define whether or not you did it. And two, there needs to be a timetable. If I tell you that I'm going to get stronger, okay, when? By how much? Did I do if I go to the gym tomorrow and, put a pen cap on top of the weight that I moved last week and I successfully move it, I could say I'm stronger. I don't know that I feel like I'm stronger. If I say I want to lose weight and I cut off my foot, I've lost weight. Is that really the direction that I want to go? No. Even when we know the general approach, we have to trust that it's going to work out because otherwise it wouldn't be worth doing, right? If everybody was in shape, nobody's in shape. If everybody has amazing martial arts skills, nobody has amazing martial arts skills. There's a relativity there. And if we take a look at what goals most people set, most of the goals are set in such a way that it differentiates someone from the people around them.
Hmm. I was thinking about this process of you've got your long-term aspirational thing that you would like and these steps to get there. And there's sometimes people will get well, there's two parts that I'm thinking of. People can get too caught up on the measurements. That measurement is important, so you know more objectively whether or not you're achieving your goal. But as you said, if you cut off your foot, you can lose. If the name of the game is losing weight, then amputation is the solution, right? So
It's the most
there's
effective thing you can do.
yeah. So if that's obviously not going to be a healthy thing that fits the actual long-term goal that person's likely got in mind with that lost weight.
Right.
And there are times when we either fall short of our goal, of our short-term measurable goal, but we're still moving in the right direction. And there's
Mhm.
times when we've hit our goal Um, in the case of the foot, like you may have hit the short-term goal, but you're actually further from your end destination. And there's also, I was thinking about stripes. Now we stepping into sort of the martial arts world of things. You have you have a system where you've got 6 different belts,
Mhm.
including black belt and white belt, so 5 belts if you want to negate one of them, and you don't do stripes in between. And and I could certainly see the benefit of stripes in the terms of I've checked these things off and I've got these short-term increments, but that assumes everyone develops in a linear way. I just bumped into someone at a tournament who was talking about how far he was from his next belt because he didn't have any stripes. And I was like, maybe you'll blast through some of those things. Sometimes I worry that people's goals become prescriptive, like that
Yeah.
they must, it's going to take X, because it's going to take X amount of time to do this on average, it must be for me. Not that I'm going to, that we can get stuck. And I was just curious if you could speak to making sure that your goals are adaptable enough to be personalized in that way.
I'm going to answer your question maybe a little differently.
Yeah.
I work with
That
a
was a
lot of
lot.
people who set goals, in martial arts, in the consulting work that I do as well. And people tend to fall into one of two camps. They are terrified of making goals, so they make them really small. Like, well, next week I'm going to put 2 pen caps on the weight. Right? It's like, well, you could do that now. Stop. That's not a goal. What's the whole purpose of the goal? It's to get you to challenge yourself. It's to get you to ride out through some of those weaker times. It helps you condition discipline. And then you've got folks on the other side, and I have a very good friend who sets goals that are so lofty because he looks at them differently. And he says, well, if I'm going to make $1 bajillion and I work towards that, then when I make 1 million, that's more than I would have made otherwise. And I think the reality is somewhere more in the middle. I think the effective way of using goals is more in the middle, that it needs to be something that makes me a little uncomfortable. If my business made $1,000 this year and I want my business to make $1 million next year, if I can't even wrap my head around the future where that's possible, I'm not going to get there. But if I made $1,000 this year and I say, you know what? I only worked a few months this year. It was new. I've got a better understanding. I think next year I can do 25,000. And then I bump it to 30, right? Okay. It makes me a little uncomfortable, but I can see a reality where that's possible. If my goal is to weigh 17 pounds, I don't see a reality where that's possible, just as I don't see a reality where I'm playing in the NBA or a world-class power lifter. There's goals. If you cannot conceive of the reality, the goal is irrelevant. So we have to make sure that goal fits in with your own perceptions of reality. And if it's something that you want and you cannot perceive it, then that's different work. Otherwise, I'm just blindly throwing myself against a goal. And I'm pretty
Okay.
sure I didn't answer your question, so keep going.
My question was was probably like a 3-part question in any case, without as much clarity. But I think we're speaking to a similar thing, that making sure that things are achievable and that we're not getting stuck on them. I think measurements are important, so we
Yeah.
know we're progressing, but getting too caught up on whether or not it was. I'm not sure that putting just because we can have a measurable improvement doesn't mean that we've actually moved towards the bigger goal, and that we need to be flexible in our goals while still pushing ourselves. Um, is, I guess, the short of it.
Progress comes from a place of discomfort, and if you're not feeling uncomfortable in an area of your life, create a routine that builds in a feedback loop where you are uncomfortable. And once you understand what that looks like, then you can set out a timetable and say, okay, so my goal here is this. If I've just started going to the gym and lifting weights, my goal should be consistency in going to the gym and lifting weights. It should be that I'm going to go 25 times every month. It should not be certain numbers. But if I've done that for 6 months, now maybe it's time to set the number goal.
Okay. Well, thanks for coming on for all these little
You're welcome.
interviews. I
Thanks for
really
having me.
appreciate all these conversations.
Good times.
Folks, you've been listening to Resilience Radio. I'm Irvin Eisenberg. I was just talking with Jeremy Lesniak, who does various things, including martial arts, personal training, and business coaching, or business marketing consulting, all sorts of things. In any case, the music was brought to you by Aaron Marcus with their tune Some Biological Process. And if you liked this, I hope that you check out the other episodes, either with Jeremy or some of the other guests. And until next time, take care.